All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 1st, 2021 meeting of the Yellow Springs Village Council. And let's go ahead and do a roll call. And I believe we have Judy Kidner back to do that for us.
We do. Hausch.
I'm here.
McQueen. Here. Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Present.
Perlis.
Here.
Also present are Chief Police Carlson, Public Works Director Johnny Burns, Village Manager Josue Salmarone. Is Finance Director Matt Dillon, is Matt on?
Yes.
Thank you. And Village Solicitor Brianne Parcels. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Judy, and we're glad to see you. So glad that you are on the mend, and yeah, welcome. So next up we have announcements, and did I see? Yes, Chief Carlson is here. And Chief, I wanted you to lead off the meeting with an amazing announcement about our very own Officer Rafoul.
Absolutely, thank you, Brian. I'm very pleased and proud to announce Officer Paul Rafoul was nominated as the Greene County Officer of the Year for CIT. Many of you know Paul. He does work evening and nights, but there were so many accolades to list. I'm kind of narrowing it down. Paul is one of those officers who calms any situation on scene. He's also one of those officers that in the past year has provided numerous CPR rescues, Narcan saves for overdoses. And again, as I said, when he's on scene, he brings a calm to the scene. And I think a lot of that is CIT training. A lot of that is Paul's makeup, if you will. And, you know, people know if we're there to help or not. So I'm extremely proud. And if you see Paul, tell him way to go. As a representative of the Yellow Springs Police Department, we're all very, very proud of you, Paul. Brian, I have two other quick announcements to make. Please do. I'm also excited to announce, and I think Josue will share this in the manager's section of the meeting. On January 25th, the Yellow Springs Police Department, we received our final certification for safe policing for safe communities. And this was put together by the OCJS and the Ohio Collaborative. These policies and procedures that we've had to add, change, or amend are not limited to, but consist of no chokeholds, a ban on chokeholds. Of course, we're in adherence to our constitutional standards, termination of use of force, the duty to intervene, training protocols on use of force and de-escalation, appropriate medical care, rendering aid, warn before shooting, shoot at or from a moving vehicle, not allowed, warning shots, not allowed, no-knock warrants, not allowed, early intervention systems, hiring of personnel, and community engagement. It took the better part of 20 to become compliant, but we're very proud that that's taken place. And the last thing I wanted to share with you, I mentioned to some folks in a Zoom meeting last week, and they thought it'd be a good idea just to bring up at the beginning of the meeting. I was real proud in the office last week. One of Johnny's utilities persons, Nathalie Hutchins, she takes money, works all day, takes utility payments, and sometimes is a little bit more in the know than we may be with residents. She came over, Florence wasn't in her office, she was out helping someone, and said that a person may need assistance with food, as they told her that they used the last of their money to keep the heat on. So I was just really proud, you guys, because in a matter of minutes, we had two officers out, one in the food pantry gathering essentials, another shopping at the grocery store. And within an hour, we were able to deliver groceries to a single mom and her two children. These are things that happen all the time that we don't talk about. And I think it's neat to share those stories with you when I can. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chief. And, you know, I know that I've seen lots of kudos for the well-deserved recognition of Officer Rafoul. I can say I experienced his skills with de-escalation several times during the Mask Ambassador initiative, and I was really appreciative of his abilities in that regard. It's not easy in those situations to stay calm, cool, and collected and get to a better resolution. So thank you. Proud of our peace officers. I wanted to shift into, I guess, a more reflective recognition of 3 villagers who have recently passed, who had an important connection to our local government. And as you know, we've had several folks that we've lost, especially over the last few months. But I wanted to recognize, first of all, Rachel McKinley, who was our former village treasurer, and a legacy that Rachel left that was been really important for the village is she regularly pushed us to take money out of an account where it was not earning any interest and invest those general funds in a safe but more revenue generating way. And that's made a huge difference. And Rachel was really the one that pushed that and got council and the village team to work together to improve that. Second person I wanted to celebrate is Dan Kerrigan. Dan Kerrigan was very involved in village issues on a lot of different levels. Dan in particular was served on our bicycle enhancement committee and was a key reason that we got that first Safe Routes to School grant that allowed us to build the sidewalk that connects the Fair Acres neighborhood down Winter Street to Mills Lawn, and also helped set the stage for getting the second Safe Routes to School grant that will build a sidewalk to make Limestone safer and also our students and residents safer. So I will say personally, when I came to town, my nephews referred to Dan as Uncle Dan and Kate as Aunt Kate, and had a really special relationship with them. And I was lucky to get to meet them early on. And Kate and the family, we really just send our thoughts and so sorry for your loss. Third person that I wanted to mention is Phil Miller. And I know everyone knows Phil and Sue Miller and their daughter and granddaughter. And, we always saw Phil and Sue walking downtown for their morning cup of coffee. They were always have been very active in village issues, highlighting things that are happening in the community, contributing perspectives in a constructive and productive way. For those of you guys that ever attended one of Phil's horseradish making parties, we were crying and laughing at the same time. It was an experience that just blows you away. And it's just incredible to lose all these folks. So I think that we should have a moment of silence to recognize all the losses in the village. All right, thanks everyone. Okay, a few other announcements I have, and I'll see if anyone else has any. If you haven't heard yet, February 14th is Ohio Loves Transit Day, and Transit Celebrating Week starts on February 7th. Very important that we recognize how important public transit is, especially given the climate that we're in and the fact that equity is so important so that everyone can get to where they need to go. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, today's the 35th anniversary of Rails to Trails Conservancy. And obviously I have a personal stake in it, but I also wanted to remind folks that we have the Midwest Regional Office of of Rails to Trails Conservancy right here in Yellow Springs, just a couple blocks up the street. And what a great celebration of our walking and biking friendly culture. And remember, we are a Buckeye Trail town and a bicycle friendly community. Are there any other announcements?
I have one.
Brian?
Yes, is that Mary Ann?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd like to piggyback on both the announcements you made, both about the recent deaths. I think as we look at the Yellow Springs news, it's more and more, it seems like more and more people we know are dying. And I think it just highlights how precious and transient our lives are. And the more we can remember that and welcome people and be kind to people, the better. I'd also like to congratulate Officer Rafool and also the Yellow Springs Police Department. The police bear a lot of responsibility, as they should, because they have a lot of power. And I'm really proud of our department and the work they've been doing to become true peacekeepers. So thank you to the Yellow Springs Police Department. And lastly, I would like to announce that tomorrow is Brian Hausch's birthday. Happy birthday, Brian.
Thank you. Aw. Did I hear that somebody else had an announcement?
I do. We do. We have a couple, Brian.
Okay, great.
I'll check one and I'll let Matt jump in on the second one. I want to add to what Chief Carlson said regarding the significant accolades and awards and recognition that our police department is doing. I also want to talk about one additional certification we just secured, and that's one of the 8 can't wait practices is de-escalation. Well, we've done all the de-escalation training of our officers, but now we have 2 officers that are trained to have train-to-trainer certification. So they train de-escalation strategies and tactics. So that's a key trait and function that council and our citizens expect of our police department, and we've got that capacity. They've been trained, and they also have the capacity to train others. And Matt, I'll let you take the second one.
Yes, Brian, I would like to announce we will be extending the deadline for guest lodging tax returns that need to be submitted to our office for the village. This deadline will be extended from today for 30 days until March 1st to allow for issues related to COVID and just give us a little bit more leniency without penalties. After March 1st, we will have to start imposing penalties, and this will be a special exception just for this year, just to extend it to March 1st. And there are no current plans to extend the deadline outside of that time period. And we'd like to just, let our residents who will be returning guest lodging tax forms that they do have an extra 30 days. And I will be sending out letters to which further explain this.
All right, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Josue. Any other announcements? Okay. 2 other somewhat quick things. I was on a call earlier today, and I thought I would share some things that came out of a study that was done by the Ohio Travel Association, where they surveyed specifically travel and hospitality related businesses across the state. And they noted that 91% of those businesses indicated significant losses and decreases in spending during COVID, no surprise. But I thought it was important, especially because this really impacts our community and maybe our understanding of what our local businesses are going through. The average loss since COVID started has been 52% in profits. So that really struck me, as well as the fact that the job losses in Ohio, 1/3 of those are in the tourism hospitality industry. and also the fact that the impact on local taxes has been $223 million, specifically related to the tourism industry. And you know, I think that not only did I want to make sure that this was information that we were aware of, but the ultimate impact is that the impact on this part of the economy is so deep that we will not fully recover if our tourism and hospitality industry does not recover. So I want you to think about that. I think that it really underscores why we put as much support from our CARES Act dollars and other resources into our local businesses. But yeah, that really took me. Last thing I want to talk about, and I think we've got an image for this. I want to end on a positive note. And this in part is a thank you to the Village team and the fact that as an extension of our Youth Learning Center, the Village has been able to support the speech and debate team, and we have a middle school and a high school team. And some of you may know that we had our 3rd annual Fearless Forensic Festival. It was virtual, but we hosted 41 teams and 305 competitors. And these were schools from all over the state, including we picked up a school from Colorado. Our middle school got 1st place out of 14 middle schools, with all of our kids placing in the finals. We got a 1st place from Jenny Meekin, a 2nd place from Evie Thomas, a 1st place from Peyton Horton, and a 4th place from Zach Underwood. They were all competing here in different rooms, safe, masked, and it was awesome. Our high school got 4th place out of 17 small high schools across the state. We had Joaquin Espinoza and Delia Hallett, who wrote original speeches, and Galen Seek, who's placed 10th out of 45 students in Lincoln Douglas debate, debating that killer robots should be banned. So it was super awesome. Community support, Village support has been great. And to see these kids keep on doing this activity and speak their real truth during these times has been awesome. So announcements done. Let's move to the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have the minutes from our last meeting on January 19th, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move.
Second.
Okay, and Judy, if we can call the roll, please.
Yes, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we're gonna review the agenda. So anything we need to add, refine, or remove?
Brian, I would like to remove an item from the agenda. That's the joint meeting. I'm sorry, I have not been able to schedule that.
Okay, sounds good.
Brian, I believe, if I'm correct, you can remove the 2nd reading for ordinance 2021-03.
Yep. Okay, and then the 3rd thing I noticed is that, and it was great to have those reports, especially about the Greene County Regional Planning in there and the YSDC, but we will do the board and commission report outs at our 2nd meeting on the 15th. So we can remove that item as well. All right.
I would like to add an item.
Yep.
There's a letter in communications from Jerry Sutton
Thank you. Yes.
with a request for some funding from the village, and I'd like to put that in new business.
That sounds great. Okay. Anything else? All right, then we are going to move on to petitions and communications. Mary Ann.
Yes, we received a response from the Greene County prosecutor to the letter we submitted requesting there be no cash bails at Greene County in Ohio in support of the local group that's working in that regard. Received a letter from Henry Myers regarding his proposals for village income tax. And as I mentioned, a letter from Jerry Sutton regarding the McKee Foundation cost of living study and a request for some financial support from the village, which I requested to be put into new business.
All right. Thank you, Mary Ann. All right, so we're going to move into legislation. And I believe we have, first of all, ordinance 2021-01, and this is a second reading. And Judy, let's go ahead and do that by title only.
All right, this is ordinance 2021-01, adopting rules and procedures for council.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay. All right, I'm going to give a little bit of preface, but I know there's some folks that want to speak about some of these issues. I guess I just want to highlight that one of the things that we have come to realize is that particularly in the current times, and it has been highlighted that rules and procedures of council can change from year to year. Laura highlighted that in current times, we are very concerned about everyone's mental and physical health, and recognizing that now more than ever, village values around respect and being a model employer and anti-racism and being a welcoming community are significantly important, although I think we probably all think they're always important. And so we want to make sure that respect and civility is thought about now more than ever. But that being said, I think the major changes are highlighting that we want to make sure that that our elected officials are respecting our team members in the same way that our employee manual and our village values highlight. And that is not to say that criticism is not a part of that, but there's a way to do that respectfully. The second thing is highlighting, with all our focus on anti-racism, that we as elected officials are also recognizing, as we expect with our commission members and our team members, to respect those items. And a third aspect of this is related to highlighting things around executive sessions, and these aren't really changes, but making sure that we preserve the privilege around executive sessions. A final thing is making sure that we are clear, as we expect with commission members and team members, that when we speak, we are speaking on behalf of ourselves, and we want to make that really clear so that there isn't an impression that any of us are speaking on behalf of all of council. So those are some of the highlights. I'm happy to, I guess, hear any comments or questions from council members. And then, of course, we will open it up to the public. And with that, I am going to open the public hearing. So questions or comments from council members?
Okay, so could I speak?
Sure.
Thank you. So the first thing in my memo I want to highlight is that in the past, we have passed council rules as a resolution. And resolutions are appropriate for things that are not required by law and that are more the subject of policy that's changeable year to year, council to council. And why this is an ordinance, I do not know, but I think it is more appropriately a resolution. And with that said, I asked Judy, in any event, even if you wanted to pass it as an ordinance, I don't believe, and Judy, you can pipe in, that it was published as required. So in any event, if it wasn't published as required, you couldn't pass it anyway. But I would like to make a couple of motions at the end of the discussion, if you please. The second point is the language in particular that I believe is a violation of the First Amendment as a prior restraint and a content-based restraint on speech is the following language. In discussions of village business, council members shall refrain from making inflammatory, derogatory, or slanderous remarks and shall refrain from ad hominem attacks, blaming or assigning negative motives, and from knowingly repeating false or inaccurate information. And each and every one of those words, as you well know, is something that is fairly subjective. What is one man's trash talking is another man's lyric. What is one's accurate information is another one's lie. So this is very problematic speech that we would be enacting into law, and I think it's a violation of the First Amendment. I think it's an attempt to control the content of political speech. If we think back to occasionally, government does a lot of tough things, and they can have the power to do real harm to others. And so sometimes government is legitimately criticized. So occasionally that happens. And if council people want to use strong language, I think they should be able to do so. And, the control on their language ultimately is going to be the ballot box. When you look at the cases about political speech, most often when speech is attempting to be, people are attempting to suppress speech, it's often been against things like anti-war protesters, women's rights activists, suffragettes, people trying to bring awareness to certain very important issues, whether it be choice, abortion, Second Amendment issues. So, these kinds of issues cause emotions to run high. So this is new. We've never seemed to have needed it before in this village. And in the village of Yellow Springs, of all places, to restrict speech, I think is pretty astounding. So I will stop there. I have written a long brief. I hope people read it. There are many, many cases that are protective of this kind of speech. And I'm sorry that if this passes, I think it's a very unfortunate day in the village of Yellow Springs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. I saw that Josue can respond to the noticing of the ordinance.
Yes, Brian, and Judy may be able to add to this. The requirements of legal notice have been met. The ordinance was legally noticed in the January 7th newspaper. And I'm happy to screen share the front cover of the newspaper and the section in the newspaper that contains the legal notice. Furthermore, the attachments have been available through clerk base as they have been the practice, and I verified that the links are up on clerk base, and I've checked them with Judy and they were all there. So this ordinance meets the legal notice requirements.
I'd like to respond to that. This problematic speech was not in the paper. And the public, we're expecting people to dig and dig and dig. And I spent about an hour trying to dig and find the attachments on our village website, and I couldn't find them. And nor should I have to dig. The attachments actually should be with the exhibit, which is in the packet for everyone to see. And this is a real problem, maybe with the internet age, is we expect everybody to be able to dig and dig and dig. And if they don't know how to do it or don't know what to click on, too bad for them. Thank you.
The process we follow for this notice is like very much every other ordinance that we've noticed. I don't know what else to say. Judy, is there anything you would like to add?
Only this is always the way that in previous years this has been done. The sections that are referenced are always included as links, simply because they're fairly extensive. It should just be a click and go. That doesn't speak to any issues someone might be having with their server or anything of that nature. And I realize that can certainly be a problem, but in general, it's the simplest way for someone to just quickly access that reference. And that's why we had chosen to do it that way for the last, probably been about 6 years.
This is Lisa. I have a comment. So I did read the Curlis brief, and I found myself kind of scratching my head because my understanding of the challenge that we were trying to solve is that council people were not being asked to comply with basic 101 level workplace civility practices. This is not about free speech. This is about workplace civility, creating a hostile work environment, and just being respectful to each other. And not using language that is harassment or demeaning in an unnecessary way. So I guess, maybe I'm not a career politician. So, Laura, you've criticized me for this before, my naivete. But I believe that even as an elected official, it's reasonable to expect me to not demean people, to not use hurtful language, to try to be professional as much as possible. And I don't really feel that that's a breach of my First Amendment as an employee or as a elected official. I believe that's just how we should treat each other. And I believe if we have standards for the village team about how they interact and workplace civility and harassment and the creation of a hostile work environment, that we should also comply with those rules because they are just kind and they make sense. There's no reason to make someone feel bad with your language. That's, to me, not a First Amendment breach. So I found this whole veering over into First Amendment to be distracting from what I thought we were trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Other council members, Kevin or Marianne, that would like to make any comment?
Yeah, I would just like to respectfully disagree with Laura in terms of the part of the document that she called out, refraining from making inflammatory, derogatory, slanderous, etc. And it is true that oftentimes a lot of things that happen in our society are relative, but that's part of the problem, is that even truth has become relative. But I think at the end of the day, I think there is a common understanding, and then we allow for the variations or the deviations. But I think if you use a word and say, hey, let's not use the derogatory or slanderous remarks, I think we can all have a general understanding of what that means and agree to refrain from doing that. And again, those outliers, where there is room for debate, where I might think what you said is slanderous and you think not. Again, I believe those are outliers, and most of the time we're gonna, I think, all have a common understanding of what decency is, and it's sad that I almost have to question my own comment. Do we really all understand what decency is? Well, here's the deal: if we don't make an effort, if we don't make a good faith effort to identify, the guidelines of decent, non-slanderous, etc., it'll be free.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Marianne?
We've just had 4 years of a president who did all of those things. Lied, slandered, threatened, demeaned. We could hardly find a more perfect example of, I think, what this is about. It's about how we treat each other as people. It's not about topics. It's not about criticizing actions taken by anybody. So I know we could spend the whole council meeting talking about it, and I don't particularly want to do that, but I don't have a problem with the language. Some of it is vaguer. Some of the words are vaguer than others, but I'm not sure that we need to spend hours trying to come up with the exact perfect language.
Okay, thanks, Mary Ann. Megan Bachman.
Thank you, Brian. Megan Bachman, Yellow Springs News. I guess my first question would be a clarification. Is this applicable to council members, commission members, citizens? I was wondering if that could be clarified. As you know, I've spoken out in the past against infringing too much on what people can say at council meetings, specifically citizens. But I think it's important as well for council members to be able to have a vigorous debate. I think this is the forum for it. I think that the citizens expect that. And if somebody's acting in bad faith, I think that somebody should be able to call that out. I guess that might be assigning a negative motive. I think if a blaming versus pointing out that somebody may be at fault of something, I feel like that is going a little too far, specifically those two things. So I think sunshine law exists so that we can have these kinds of conversations at council meeting. And so things don't always get hashed out outside of council meeting. And I guess I feel like I may be like out of the loop of what exactly, if there's been an incident or if this is in response to something. It feels like people are maybe talking about that. And again, if it is an incident, I would hope that that incident could be dealt with without, again, changing the whole rules of the game, because I don't feel like this is an issue that I have witnessed at council meeting. And again, I would prefer the least restrictive language on the statements made at council. So again, if I could get that clarification on the who's impacted by this. And I guess one more quick thing about meetings. The last few meetings I've noticed there's been, we can add this before second reading. I think it would be great if a lot of changes were not made before the second reading of an ordinance, if possible, because again, people are not really going to get much of a chance to weigh in on these issues if many changes are made at the second reading. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan. And I do want to emphasize two things that you brought up. No changes have been made between the first and second reading. So we're seeing the original document. And secondly, the additions are directed at council members. So there are no changes for citizens and there are no changes for commission members. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I guess I do want to say a few other things to, I guess fill in some gaps without prolonging this too much, but to be a little bit more concrete, for the past year, several complaints have been brought up about the way that council members have communicated with staff. I, similar to Lisa and Marianne and Kevin, do not think that not allowing a council member to refer to an employee as honey is not a violation of protected political speech. I think there are ways to criticize that don't have to be threatening and don't have to be disrespectful. I also think it's important to realize that, I felt like I was in my con law class from first year law school. We can talk about First Amendment free speech. I think we do an amazing job in this village and with this council of protecting that to the maximum degree. But, we probably all heard the fact that, the First Amendment does not protect you to yell fire in a crowded theater. Right? That's one of the most famous quotes that, wasn't in the packet. It doesn't protect, in my mind, racist speech. At least we don't want to protect that, which is why the anti-racism thing is in there. Although I don't think that that's what's being questioned here. But at the end of the day, I think blowing this up to this big First Amendment issue when we are not trying to limit anyone's political speech. We're trying to be sensitive to the fact that everybody is struggling right now. But even if we weren't in a pandemic, I don't believe that that the First Amendment is meant to protect berating and other things, and we can accomplish that in a different way. So we don't want to get into more detail about that, but those are the reasons behind this. We also change council rules and procedures regularly. So if this is problematic, I would say, just as Laura referenced, I mean, we are going to hear from people if somehow this is limiting their ability to communicate. I can't see that happening. And I also think that, you know, in fact, a censure, if that's the worst thing that can happen, is again, not something, as precedent shows, that's going to limit your political speech. So anyway, that is not the motivation. And actually, I don't think any of us are really that happy about having to get into this, but it's become enough of an issue that, that we have brought it forward. So any final questions or comments before we close the public hearing? And I know that, Laura, you had some motions too, maybe?
Yeah, I do.
This is, Lisa, I do wonder about whether this should be a resolution and not an ordinance.
Okay. Brianne, do you want to speak to that?
It's been brought forward as an ordinance. If council chooses to modify it at this time, as Brian noted, there were no changes made between the first and second readings. Council can act to modify an ordinance. As far as whether it should be a resolution or an ordinance, it's really council's prerogative. As Laura aptly said, ordinances have lasting effect. And if you want to codify the effects, you would of course use an ordinance. If you want this to be something that's only binding on this council, you could proceed and ask that the clerk assign it a new number as a resolution.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else?
I just want to say for the record, I think this does have a chilling effect on people's speech, and it's intended to. And I find that it has a chilling effect on me. I'm not sure what I can say that would be at all critical of government without risking censure. And that case that was put in the packet simply says the court thinks politicians should just have tough skins, and censure won't stop them from talking and saying what they want to. Okay, maybe that's one case, you know, but I think it does have that effect. And for that reason, I would like to move to strike this sentence, that in discussions of village business, council members shall refrain from making inflammatory, derogatory, slanderous remarks, and shall refrain from ad hominem attacks, blaming, or assigning negative motives, and from knowingly repeating false or inaccurate information.
Okay, can I get a second? Okay, hearing none, the motion fails. Laura, did you have another motion?
I do. I would like to move to change this from an ordinance to resolution.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the resolution versus ordinance?
I would like to understand a bit more about why one way or another. If it were an ordinance, then I assume we could be reminded of it every year, but we wouldn't have to pass it every year. If it's an ordinance, does that mean we have to pass it every year? Or?
No, if it's an ordinance, you don't have to pass it every year, but it is sort of binding down the road to where it wouldn't have to be renewed. And you could, in fact, codify it into the council rules. I believe they're under Chapter 206 of the codified ordinances. If it's a resolution, it's designed to be temporary in nature, binding only on this council.
Binding only on this
We
year?
have another set of rules for the next incoming council. As Judy noted, the last time the rules were amended, it was by resolution.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'm just going to quote from one of the cases that Brianne put in the packet on page 4 of the Zillich case. The court specifically addresses this issue. and says resolutions expressing a political view, such as a resolution against flag burning or lewd films or something that they consider immoral, is that to be morally wrong, but is not a, quote, law abridging the freedom of speech, unquote. However, if you make this an ordinance, it will be a law abridging the freedom of speech.
Well, I mean, there seems to be precedent out there that would contradict that statement, but, you know, I mean, again, the other thing I did not highlight is that, you know, while freedom of speech may protect using four-letter words at a council meeting, there's a lot that suggests that that may not fit with the decorum of trying to get things done.
Can I just ask Brianna a question? Because I guess I'm a little confused about it. To ask it in the reverse of the way that Marianne did. If this is passed as an ordinance, does council have any greater authority to censure a colleague than they would if this were passed as a resolution? Because my understanding is that this doesn't give any other body any right to censure or reprimand or anything else other than council. Council remains in charge of its own behavior. So what does passing this as an ordinance allow council to do that passing it as a resolution does not?
You've hit the nail on the head, Judy. It would be the way the ordinance versus the resolution is phrased, again, is that this attachment is what will go into effect. So whether you call it an ordinance, whether you call it a resolution, that attachment is what is being adopted as the council rules. So the fact that that attachment says this is what we are going to impose as our standards for council decorum, and this is how we're going to enforce it, that would not change regardless of whether it's treated as an ordinance or a resolution.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, then we're going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could, I'm sorry. Well, we need to vote on this motion. Judy, could you call the roll on the motion to make it a resolution?
Yes. McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
No.
Stokes.
No.
Curlis.
Yes.
Hausch.
No.
Okay, the motion fails.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we're gonna, well, any final comments before we close the public hearing? Okay.
I just think this is a sad day.
Okay. Well, I guess I will say, I think it's a good recognition of the importance of civility and respect. All right, so we're going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll on the ordinance, please.
Yes. Curlis.
No.
Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. I appreciate the discussion. Sure it'll come up again. All right, next up we have resolution 2026-06. And Judy, I believe we can read that in by title only.
This is approving the purchase of various equipment.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Josue, are you talking about this or?
Yes, this is me, but there'll be several of us speaking about it, and depending on council's questions, we'll determine who's speaking on the matter. This resolution's administrative item in housekeeping, because the council has already approved a budget allowing us to to purchase this equipment. However, that budget approval doesn't necessarily give us outright permission to go out and order these things because they exceed $30,000 and required a council resolution. So we've got 4 items on here that we're requesting council's explicit approval to start the procurement process of this equipment and vehicles. So again, this is already included in the budget, so we're not adding anything to the budget. We're asking for your authorization to go out and start the procurement process for these items that individually are 30,000 or greater. So I'll start with the first one is the police cruiser that's in the budget. This is for the hybrid vehicle. And we're looking at one particular vendor that's providing this at amount of not to exceed $36,692. This is just for the vehicle. The equipment transfer, as you know, we try to save money on the police equipment by transferring what equipment could be salvaged from other vehicles to move to this vehicle. So that'll be an additional expense, but certainly under the threshold. That I think it's going to be a total of $7,000. So it's going to be below the total approved budget for the new police cruiser. The second item is a Transit 350. You may be familiar with that Transit Connect vehicle. This one is the much larger vehicle for that version. And this is to replace the water truck, part of the Public Works crew. And we're looking at the Butte Townsend dealer for this. And the amount is to not exceed the $47,437. The language in there on all of these is that or another suitable vendor for an approximately anticipated amount. That language is key because we're going through government contracts. This is part of the state cooperative purchasing contracts that exist in the state, and we're looking at what contracts have been negotiated for these equipments at the state level. The next one is a Bobcat. This is an E60 R2 version. I don't know what the difference is between the E60 and the E70 or what other numbers are, but Johnny's on the line and he would know. And this is for an excavator to be part of the Public Works fleet. The vendor's Clark Equipment Company for a value not to exceed $64,582.42. And finally, we're looking at acquiring a Bobcat compact tractor loader from the same company, Clark Equipment Company, for an amount not to exceed $54,027.40. Pictures of these items have been included in the packet, and we are happy to answer any questions council may have.
All right. Does anyone have any questions?
I just want to ask Kevin here. Just want to ask in general, Josue, I know I imagine that you have an opportunity to look at various pieces of equipment, not just vehicles, going through state of Ohio purchasing mechanisms. And I know that those things are always negotiated prices. On any given year, after a particular negotiated price has been in effect, is it possible, and are we verifying that that is still the best price compared to us going out individually trying to negotiate with the local dealer?
Yes, and actually Johnny and I looked at this last week with the Clark Equipment Company. We looked at their price list and we looked at the bid that we had from the same company, and they noted this pricing conforms to the negotiated price schedule per state contract. We went on the website, the Department of Administrative Services, they have a procurement database, and we looked at the contracts that are open and we looked for similar vehicles and what they were going for. So we were able to compare things like the Transit and what was being offered at different dealers, Valley Ford or several other dealers. So we are doing that comparative analysis. One thing that is part of your question is getting bids from someone that's not participating in the state cooperative program. But could they beat the price? Is that and we're open to that. Actually, we have looked at that. Johnny, I don't know if you want to add more to it, but we're cost sensitive, and if there's a way for us to get a better pricing, we will explore that. With some of these things, I do have to get feedback and clearance from legal because the charter is very specific, things required in bids, and the alternative to bids is going through state contracts. So if we find an item that is outside of the state cooperative purchasing procurement process, but it's at a lower price, I would touch base with Brianne, make sure that we meet the legal requirements to be able to make that purchase. Johnny, did I miss anything?
No, Kevin, to answer your question, we did go to many dealerships of different brands on the transit van, and everybody that is in that same category is significantly higher cost. On the equipment, Bobcat, it's actually Clark Equipment is who we're going through. That's the Bobcat dealer that has the state. And we stuck with Bobcat, not only because it's a good brand, but the pieces of equipment that we already have, the buckets interchange. So if we was to go to a different brand, Ford versus Chevy kind of deal, you wouldn't be able to switch the attachments around.
Right, understood. All right, good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes. First, I really appreciate finding a hybrid police vehicle. As I am reading more and more progressive communities, or well, even maybe not progressive communities, are working toward creating a fleet of hybrid or all electric, moving away from gasoline powered. And the question, I support the purchases, but I don't really understand what the transit is, how it is used.
Marion, the transit van, it's basically a large van, and that's what houses our water material, our water pieces, our tools stay inside, our material stays inside. Oh. And also one of the other big things that it does is it hooks up to our water safety trailer. So every time that we have a water problem that requires us to take out and start digging, we pull this trailer out with that van.
Yeah. I remember that now, you talking about that. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I do have a comment, and I realized that I might have only shared it offline before, but it relates to being judicious about what we put in the packet. So I counted 44 pages, which was a third of our packet, for Cruiser and Bobcat information, mostly Cruiser information. I would like us, and this was very similar to when we talked about this in the budget last year. We had an inordinate amount of pages and details that I'm not convinced are very helpful for anyone except maybe internal. So moving forward, if anyone feels that a large document is important, think about whether it all needs to go in there or whether the essentials with a note that if you need more information, you can contact whoever might be a better choice. And you can imagine when somebody looks at a packet that's 139 pages or longer, how daunting it seems. I was happy though to see that 44 pages of it I didn't really need to look at. So anyway, so let's just be a little bit more judicious about what we put in the packet. And I'm happy to, if someone's not sure, to consult with them about it. Okay, so with that, Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Perlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
And our last piece of legislation is Resolution 2021-07. And Judy, let's go ahead and read that in full, if you don't mind.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to submit a municipal grant program application to Greene County. Greene County Board of County Commissioners has established a municipal grant program to provide financial assistance, which reallocates approximately $750,000 annually to assist strategic economic development projects, including municipal fiber And whereas the Village of Yellow Springs by Resolution 2020-47 committed to the provision of municipal broadband to facilitate access for business, residents, and visitors in the village by positioning gigabit level internet to ensure equity, inclusion, and access, attract new businesses and jobs, and improve healthcare and education. And whereas the village has partnered with residents, political subdivisions, and organizations such as SpringsNet, Mavecca, YS Schools, YS Community Foundation, and Greene County to improve the infrastructure needed to provide third-party access to broadband services. And whereas the village has installed a fixed wireless network that provides high-speed Wi-Fi free to downtown Yellow Springs, creating a platform and backbone for a more extensive municipal fiber infrastructure, which will enhance economic development and quality of life. Now, therefore, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio hereby resolves that Section 1, the village manager is authorized and directed to apply to the Greene County Board of County Commissioners Municipal Grant Program to fund installation of additional fiber and provision of municipal internet service to other locations as a pilot project. Section 2, this resolution shall go into effect immediately upon its adoption.
All right, thank you, Judy. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Josue, are you talking about this one?
Yes, this is
All
me
right.
sharing my screen. I hope that you can see it. We have an opportunity to continue to do the great work that we're doing on municipal broadband, expanding internet access, reducing the digital divide, and building greater equity in our community. Today, the governor announced a $1 billion package for infrastructure projects, of which $250 million are explicit to expand broadband access. So I bring that up because it is not only a hot topic for us here in the state, but it's throughout the country, throughout the world, of creating better access. And I feel fortunate that we've been able to build a backbone infrastructure in our community for us to provide access, free access, and just better quality internet service. So the opportunity that we have before us, the county is doing something innovative, unique. They're really pushing their boundaries here, and I'm happy to see the new leadership at the Greene County, what they're doing around innovative projects, and that they're willing to commit money to these efforts to better position our residents. We've already partnered with several entities, key entities in the village, to be able to roll out a fiber and internet service. Those include Mavecca, the schools, the Community Foundation, Greene County, the SpringsNet folks, and residents. We've got a robust internet infrastructure now. Johnny was sharing with me that one of our superintendents was out connecting his GIS system to our platform while out in the field, and guy couldn't believe how fast the internet was, how fast he was connected to our GIS. He did a speed test, and the app just maxed out of what is possible. So speaks volume to the connectivity that we're providing to our employees out in the field. I've heard it from residents, particularly Eric Clark, happy with internet service and thinks that our Wi-Fi downtown's better, and so many others. So there's an opportunity for us to be able to expand the extensive municipal fiber that we've already put in place. And this will ultimately enhance economic development, quality of life, connecting our children to schools, or everyone in our community to better internet access. And my last note here is that today, Governor DeWine announced this $1 billion Investing in Ohio initiative, which includes broadband access. So what's the opportunity that we want to pursue with the county? Well, we want to apply to build an additional backhaul capacity to connect to Mavecca. And I have a graphic where I'll show you what that backhaul is. Provide fiber to businesses and home in key areas where we already have fiber infrastructure. This will be up to 100 locations. What would this do? Build out management capability and business foundations for the municipal enterprise, build a client base, and allows us to test products and services, and obviously deliver high quality, high speed internet access to our residents, which many currently aren't getting from the providers in the space now. All right, this is the map of our fiber infrastructure. This graphic here to the left is what's downtown. The graphic to the right is in the overall village. So the back hall that I'm talking about in my first bullet point, it's up here, is this red line on Dayton Street. Meveka already has fiber down Dayton Street, and these are poles that we don't own. Some of them are poles that we don't own. But these poles are tall enough and strong enough to support additional fiber on them. So working with Mveka about building some additional backhaul to connect our infrastructure back to Mveka's data center. The second portion to the opportunity we want to pursue is expanding fiber to the home access in the areas where we already have fiber. So that's this area down here. If you're wondering what this area down here, this is the Hawthorne Apartments. Working with the schools, we identify some of our more vulnerable school children and where they're located, and we needed to expand access. So schools, as you know, were a big contributor to this project, both support, encouragement, and being supportive of the project, but they also helped secure financing for the work that we did. So this was identified in partnership with the schools. So we got the Hawthorne Apartment, Corey Street Apartments, down this area, and obviously the downtown area. All that has Wi-Fi. Will have Wi-Fi access. So we want to expand fiber to the businesses and homes in these areas, these three areas, this area, the downtown area, and over in this part of south side of town. This allows us to capture a large portion of our municipality. We got things down by the Gone part, the downtown, south of town. We apologize, we haven't incorporated the north part of town over on the north of Dayton Street, but there's something that we're looking at, but that won't be covered in this project. But should we be successful in this, and we plan to be, this would also help us build capacity and get us geared up for being able to pursue opportunities that Governor DeWine is making available. We think we will be in better position to be able to pursue those other opportunities.
And Josue, can I also just insert here that if we can start generating revenue for this enterprise, that's another way that we can build it out besides the grant money?
Correct. Yes, as we have those revenue streams, we can reinvest those and those funds to do additional build up. Okay, the next set of slides are, why is internet a problem in the village? And I've conducted that presentation before, and I'm happy to do it again if you would like us to do so. But you've seen this. It's important for school and learning, healthcare, finding a job, for economic recovery. The solution, we've already built a lot of these things in place. We built the fiber infrastructure, provided public Wi-Fi. This in return helps stabilize the communities, spur economic development, build equity, and close the digital divide. This is a product review on what we did previously. We've got over 20 acres of the downtown area covered. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments from Josue? I think it looks awesome. I'll just say that. Very exciting.
I agree. It does sound exciting. Jose, I do have a question about the $250 million for fiber. I haven't seen the announcement or any qualifications for getting any of that money, but are we, to the degree that we're considered a rural community, do we have any type of advantage over, let's say, the city of Cleveland in vying for those dollars?
The announcement is fresh. Governor DeWine announced it today, and it's for the 2022 and 2023 budget. I'm hopeful that we will be competitive. One of the reasons we're not competitive with, say, the USDA rural program is that there are thresholds or certain criteria to meet. And one of them for the rural communities is internet service that the speeds that are below 25 megabits and lower. Well, we have Spectrum in our community, and Spectrum, now they're advertising 200 megabits connections. But the challenge we have is that it's all antiquated copper wires, it's oversubscribed, and the wind blows or you get a little rain and your internet gets interrupted. So, we've got some challenges with the quality of the service that we are that we are experiencing. I've experienced it myself, so Spectrum's watching and they want to question my comments on here. I experienced it myself. The times that I have been quarantined, which has been twice that I've been required to quarantine, I've tried doing my work from home, and it's a disappointing, unreliable internet connection. I'm competing with all the children that need to connect to schools.
Mm-hmm. And just to follow up on, so as Josue said, the operating budget for FY 22-23, that's what dropped today. So very promising that we're seeing things like support of broadband, support of infrastructure, other economic recovery oriented things. But basically, if this budget gets approved, that amount gets approved, the next step is to advocate for what that program should look like. And we would hope that equity and all those aspects are in there. But I do think, Kevin and council, this is an opportunity for us to write a letter or otherwise advocate for that being an element of the program. Thinking about underserved communities and that sort of thing. But that money won't kick in until next year.
Good, excellent, yeah, sounds good, thank you.
I have a question. Is there a match and what would it be?
The application process has points for matches. A match is not explicitly required. It does help contribute to the scoring of an application. Well, how we plan to fulfill that scoring sheet is that we've already contributed to the project. We dedicated CARES money. We secure funding from the schools and the community foundation, and we can use that as match for the overall project.
Josue, are you seeing Megan Bachman's got a couple of questions for you?
Okay, I see. Josue, could you put a price tag on the project as it is currently laid out? Megan, is that for the current project that we've already built, or will we anticipate connecting to the homes? I'm sorry, connecting in the future.
What you're going to be connecting in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. We have numbers on what it will cost us to connect, to bring fiber into a location, to a home or a business. And we're with the 200,000, should we be awarded the 200,000 from the county, we can connect up to 100 locations. So we're looking at a price tag of under $2,000 per connection. I think that once we secure the funding, we actually start exploring the contract arrangements for a bulk purchase of routers and equipment and fiber. We have a better price on what it will cost per unit to connect a business or a home. But our goal would be to connect up to 100 service locations.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Indeed. McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for all the great work to the village team on this. Very important, I think, to our economic recovery strategy. So we are going to now move into citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we welcome comments on any item that's not on the agenda, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any citizen concerns? Okay, I see Michael Slaughter. Go ahead and mic on, Michael.
Thank you. I wanted to quickly run through, just give me a second here. An organization that I'm involved with. It is Citizens to Preserve Mills Lawn Green Space. I want to make you aware of it. We are acting to preserve that screen space now, basically because we feel there are some facilities upgrades that the community needs for housing, and the schools are in need of facilities. there could be a potential source of revenue if the Mills Lawn property gets sold. And we believe that we can hopefully come up with a solution that can benefit the schools and the community. Data from an old report, the McBride report, shows the land has some significant value that may be beneficial to the schools. We also know that the area is zoned for commercial and high-density housing. This was also brought up in the comprehensive land use plan. What we've established, just to let you know, is a website, millslawnGreenspace.org. There's a lot of data on that site that anyone can take a look at. There's a history section of the Mills Lawn property that goes through the vision of William Mills, the layout of the property as the Philadelphia plan, or I'm going to call it our Central Park, and with the transfer of the property, kind of what's happened up to now. Another tab is green space as a part of the community, which we feel is very important. It gives us a sense of place, or our Central Park, to the Yellow Springs community. It impacts well-being of the community, and it has a nice environmental look. We have another tab where stories and photographs. I've submitted a story of my own of the old days back in the late 60s when I played Little League Baseball there, amongst a few of the other stories that are on the site. Our goal is just to get some community support for our mission to preserve that space. We recognize the schools have to do something in terms of a levy to move forward with facilities, but we believe that there's a plan that can be beneficial to both the community and the school. And again, we've done this by providing a website that answers a lot of questions and provides a lot of data. We have an email account where people can send messages or comments to us. We have a Facebook page. We are getting signatures on our petition. We have up to 122 signatures as of today. And we recently put an insert in the Yellow Springs News highlighting where we want to go with this. So essentially our mission statement is to hopefully preserve Mills Lawn as a green space for future generations. And we will be asking the school board and the village council to act permanently to preserve the western 2/3 of the Mills Lawn property as a public park for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other citizen concerns? Okay. All right, I am not seeing any. Philip, you're not seeing any? Okay. So then we're going to move into, we have no special reports. So next item is old business. And I'll begin briefly with the first item about our anti-racism actions and what the Justice System Collaborative Committee is up to. But keep in mind that we normally have now a full report in our second meeting of the month when we have our after we have our JSCC meeting. So first of all, I did mention at the last meeting that Florence Randolph is taking up the reins on the community sit-downs. And so I expect that at our next JSCC meeting, we'll have an update on where we're going with that and those important relationship building interactions. I was also really happy to be part of a meeting related to data and tracking how our police team is doing and where we want to go. It was nice to hear that Cadet Brockington from our dispatch is going to be taking on a role. Some of you may know that he's a college student and has been very engaged in the work. And Josue or Lisa, I don't know if you want to say anything briefly about where we're heading with the data, but I know we've got some good stuff that we're going to be bringing forward soon.
Brian, we got a couple of things happening with data. One is the survey and then the data group. On the survey piece, we had a really productive meeting last week about working through a survey that we can deploy or start using now. And so we want to limit the scope, because one of the things that we felt what we had an issue with is we're trying to create a survey that could capture all the inputs, and there's just so many things that's impeding progress. So we thought, keep the scope smaller so that we can get something up and running and start getting feedback. So we're looking at a simplified survey to get encounter data from constituents that have an experience with our peace officers, and we'll limit the scope of the inquiry of the questions to traffic stops, and it'll be very simplified survey. This week, we're taking the time this week to get feedback from Chief and the team and circulate it with key members, but that's some progress. We hope to have that up and running shortly, maybe in 2 to 3 weeks. On the data team, we had a productive data team meeting just today, actually, to revisit some of the work that we were doing. So in the past, you see me put out reports on traffic data, the traffic citations, how many verbal warnings, written warnings, and tickets we've issued, and what officers. So we've been able to build out a model around that. We reconvened the team again today to look at specific data points that we want to look at, and we want to start with the end in mind, or what's the question? What is what are the answers that we're looking for? So Cindy Seek has been a tremendous asset to the team, and she's designing a model, a template for us to then try to start to work on the data on the model. So start with the question first, and then looking at all the data sets and trying to make sense of it. So that's work that we continue to do. We've got a meeting already scheduled to start looking at the live data based on the model that we discussed today, and that Cindy's been so graciously contributed her time to develop.
Yeah, and so by the way,
if I can just chime in,
sure.
I really want to say that I'm so glad to be involved in this work and encouraged by the progress that we're getting now in the beginning of this year. And, it's really notable the number of people that are involved, and this ranges from the people from the community who participate in those meetings. I'm on the advisory group, and then Josue and Chief Carlson and his team. And I mean, everybody is just really, really pulling together to achieve these goals. So I'm just very grateful for the collaboration. Thanks.
Thanks for highlighting that, Lisa. Because I did want to, well, first of all, I wanted to mention, I just learned today that Cindy Seek is a certified equity mentoring trainer. So, I mean, her background continues to amaze me. And, and she really is one of our very active folks, as well as a lot of the, various groups in the community that have been contributing. I did want to just kind of close by highlighting, I've thought about Tracy Ann's comments related to capacity from the last meeting, which are not new. This has been an issue for the 7 years I've been on council. Volunteers have busy lives. Different people have different passions and abilities to, provide energy at different points. But a couple things that I've been seeing happen without even them being directed. I saw that Raven is exploring and found an app that can help make scheduling easier, because my understanding is that some people are having trouble scheduling meetings. And, I think it takes on the similar kind of doodle poll concept. I also want to mention again that we have shifted to 1 meeting per month in between council meetings. So I'm sending out a call now, and I'll put it in an email after this meeting for agenda items. So if we have agenda items, then we will schedule a meeting. If we don't, then we'll wait till the next month. But I think we do have at least a couple agenda items. And what we will also do to maximize participation, which actually has been pretty decent considering, the fact that everyone's so busy. I mean, having, a dozen to 20 people in a meeting almost every time is I think says a lot. And of course, a lot of people that haven't been at those meetings have provided input offline. But we will send out a doodle poll once we get those agenda items, which we'll want by Wednesday. And that way we can figure out the best time to get the most folks that want to participate involved. So that's what I've got for anti-racism updates. Expect more at our next meeting. And I think then this means that we're going to hand it over to the village team to talk about some of the work that they've been doing on 2021 village goals to help inform kind of what we all decide to prioritize. So Josue, I'll let you lead that one off.
All right, Brian, thank you. Joining me today is my team. I know Johnny and Denise and Matt, our line chief, had to jump off, but he's been part of this process. As you know, we've had several meetings talk about our administrative projects or goals, and keeping in mind on the council's goals and values. And a lot of our work incorporates the goals that have been put forward by council, and many of which I'm proud that we have had an influence on. I feel blessed to have a council that understands what's happening on the grounds, understands the challenges that the administration face, that our community face, and you're willing to get in there with us and work with us on these goals. So I'm going to talk a lot about how these goals interact and how we're looking to deliver for our citizens and council. So I'm going to share my screen again. I've got another PowerPoint on here. So let's see, are you able to see that? All right. So these are the council, the village strategic goals. May be hard to see, but I bring this up because we looked at what council wants to accomplish, council being the body that sets the vision for the community, right? The public elects council to deliver on our community's vision, and the council and selects me and appoints the village manager and the team. So, well, the village manager to execute on the vision. And so we start with what our community and our council wants the vision, and we incorporate what are some of the things that we see as our business imperative for us to resolve in the community, and how that adds value to our community and how that delivers for the village council goals. So all of our projects connect with what village council has proposed here, and I'm happy to get deep in any particular item that you feel that we need to, or that we need to elaborate more on. So I'll get into our priority projects. So we see these as enabling projects. We see them as projects that have a multiplier effect. By multiplier effect, it means that it helps address one issue and it helps move another one along, or helps add value to another area of work. So a good example is the municipal broadband enterprise service. We've done a lot of work in building an infrastructure backbone, providing internet access, but there's still so much more work to do. By establishing this municipal broadband enterprise, we're able to meet the technology demands of the modern workplace, the school, and the community, and close the digital divide. We're seeing it all over the country, the challenges that we're having as society due to lack of proper internet access and lack of equity within the internet access space. That specifically connects with several of the village strategic goals when we talked about affordability. I'll look at how much people are paying for broadband service in our community. It's poor quality internet that's folks are paying more than what we would be able to deliver service for. And that creates a saving for the customer and creates greater value for our community. It also helps with business development by promoting sustainable growth, and it helps build equity. So that particular goal touches on several goals that council has set forward. On the second priority enabling goal that we're looking to address is reduce water loss. We have a water infrastructure where we're losing 36% of the water that we produce. That is over a third of our water is just going somewhere that we don't know where it's going. And we know that a lot of it is going into the ground through leaks because we have age infrastructure, but we also have properties that don't have meters, and we're looking to address that. We want a system that we can track every gallon of water that we produce. And, you know, there obviously will be some that we won't be able to bill for, like the fire department. You know, emergency happens, they tap into the hydrants and they have to do what they do to save property and save lives. But, you know, that's water that we want to be able to track as well. But getting a better hold of our water loss and reducing our water loss to 25% or less is not only a business imperative, but it's also an environmentally one. I think we need to be good stewards about our precious environmental resources, and that is ensuring that we are not wasting our limited resources. That goal fits in so many different areas. Affordability. It's no secret that water cost is one of our highest utilities, and not just, it's high for our residents, and it's also high among our peers in the state. So that's something that we are looking to address, and by reducing our water loss ratio, we would help reduce the overall cost of operating our facility. It's a great facility. We've got a great engine that's running, but the chassis, the thing that supports it, which is the distribution system, is it's in bad shape, and we need to fix that as well. Third enabling goal is to design and install up to 2.25 or 2.25 megawatt solar project. You may be surprised, oh, this number just gone up, right? We started with a couple weeks ago with a 1.8 or maybe a 0.2 for the solar pavilion. We've been talking about our expiring energy contracts. Our expired energy contracts make up a 1.8 megawatts of procurement or energy contracts that we need to replace due to contracts expiring in 2021 and in 2022. We got Blue Creek Wind, and we've got the EDI landfill that's expiring that we need to replace. We've increased the number because we've got development happening in our community. We got the Ober development that is slated for in the next couple of years, and that's going to add greater demand. So we're anticipating what are going to be our future demands for energy, and so we're adding an additional energy production to this project. So that's why that number is now 2.25 megawatt from the 2 megawatt system that we had initially proposed. So how does this fit into our strategy? Well, we have a very green portfolio, and we intend to be good stewards of the environment and have as much renewable energy as possible. And this fits right into that strategy. We're replacing energy contracts, so we're not necessarily doing some new business activity. What we're looking to do is just have something local production that would help reduce transmission and distribution costs, and have something local, something green that's produced right here in Yellow Springs. This also ties into the conversations that we've had around climate action and climate change. Marianne and the Environmental Commission are spearheading climate action initiatives, and the energy portfolio and energy policies are a critical part of that climate change action plan. So continuing the work that we have done so far, but look for ways to make business improvements, meaning reducing the costs and finding opportunities to still do good and delivering renewable energy are an important aspect of the future of managing our energy portfolio. And that ties into a lot of things that council and our community has expressed desire in. We have great residential solar participation, and we want to continue to encourage that. Our community made a commitment and put money behind it by buying energy contracts that were more expensive than coal. That requires a commitment. And so with our actions, we look to honor the vision and desires of community while also addressing affordability and other climate action goals that council has set. Continue safe routes to school and the active transportation plan. These are two big projects that we have underway. We've sent out letters to property owners along the active transportation project, the bike path. So we'll have surveying crews out this week to do that work. These two projects are critical to facilitating active transportation. Brian, you mentioned this in the announcements. So we'll continue to do the work that our community has been trying to do for many years now. Continue the sanitary sewer improvements. I can't say enough how great we did on being able to reduce infiltration and inflow. It speaks to the rewards that we reap when we're laser focused on addressing one particular thing. You know, the sanitary sewer systems in bad shape. When I joined the team back in June of 2019, one of the letters that were on my desk waiting for me to be open was a letter from the Ohio EPA that we were exceeding our daily flows, our daily flow capacity of 600,000 gallons per day. So that was a problem, and Johnny and the team, we got together, we looked at every information we had on the matter. We discovered a study from 2012 that outlined some basic things that needed to get done and didn't get done, and we got to it, and we took care of a lot of those issues, and we've been able to reduce clean water from our sanitary system. So we're going to continue that work because we know that there are lines that are at risk of collapsing, and we have a lot of infiltration and inflow. So there's more work for us to do that, to keep up with that, and we'll continue to do that. Any questions so far? I have a couple of more slides. All right. One of the things that I've instituted coming on board is institutional learning. One of the challenges we have is there is no easy transition of records and studies that get transferred from one administration or one team to the next team. So Raven is leading a project of file digitization and cataloging of records and studies for easy access and institutional learning. So we want to document, digitize everything that we have, make it readily available, and use it as a way to learn and improve on the work of the government. I earlier just talked about the 2012 RCAP study that we paid a lot of money for to have it done and to inform the planning and work plan and execution of work that needs to be done. But Child and Watch just sat on someone's desk, and it wasn't shareable, so we really couldn't study it and learn from it. In my tenure here, we've implemented SharePoint and implemented a lot of technology that allows us to share information in real time and learn from it and build on it and execute actionable and measurable plans. So we want to continue that until 2021. So make better use of SharePoint, workflows, and continue the work that we're doing. We've got an outdated personnel policy or current personnel policies from 2014. So there are things there that, there are things now that we have to deal with that were not contemplated in 2014. So we need to make some updates to be in compliance. But furthermore, we want a personnel policy manual and approaches that encourage innovation, encourage the hard work that our employees currently exhibit, but we can do more of. I think, Brian, you said it well earlier. People want to be in a safe work environment. They don't want to work in a hostile work environment. When people feel appreciated for the work and recognized for the work, and there's fair labor practices, we're going to get the most out of our employees. We're going to get the best out of our employees. And so by updating our personnel policies, that would help deliver better results for our community. Rerouting Dayton store system. This has been a project that's been well documented in the village government from the 1960s. Several studies have gone into it. Johnny and Denise were working on a new design and said, well, how do we reroute the storm system? Well, we looked at what had been done in the past, and the solution that we came up with today was the same solution that the team developed in the 1960s. But how could we have known? There was no good record keeping. But the team dusted some old images, and we were able to find a plan. And it was a solid engineering design, and we're looking to continue that work and reroute the Dayton storm water system. Develop a marketing and conceptual plans for the CBE and the railroad property. We've got a great lot right across the street. I think Laura did a wonderful job in securing that asset and bought it with great value, but we need to do more with it. We need to do more with it, and there's a lot of opportunity there to enhance the economic environment, the ecosystem locally. So I look forward to focusing, putting energy into the development of the railroad property and the CBE. The CBE in particular, we've lost our farm credit, and I shared that information in the past. And so we need to do something. The intention of the village was to encourage economic development at that corridor. So we need to do it. We're planning on creating marketing plans, and we're going to work closely with the Development Corporation and some of our partners to bring some great designs that we can market and hopefully attract new jobs. When we talk about affordability, we need to bring in, increase the tax base. And one way to do that is the income tax. And to do that, we've got to bring in jobs. So we hope to bring good paying jobs into our community by an effective marketing strategy. The update, the Parks and Rec Master Plan. Our current plan is from 1998. I think for a community that loves its parks and wants to create enriching and encouraging and learning natural spaces, it's gone too long since we've updated our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So that's something that we've got on the radar for 2021. We've got a lot of enthusiasm and the administration to do it. We have a lot of enthusiasm from our community. Tony from Livable Communities, she is on it. She's got some great ideas. Nadia Malarkey has a great conceptual design for the Betty Hughes Park. And there's so many great ideas out there that the time is right to update this plan. And finally, we need a platform to be able to distribute information to all of our residents and make it accessible. Laura complained earlier that it was too hard to find an exhibit. The links weren't easily found. We want to improve that. We know that as fancy as our website is, it is not enough for what our community needs. So we want to make an improvement to that. And that's also our enabling goal. Several other items. There was a goal that council identified about creating a process to track a budget and whatnot. We've got a lot of great tools to track budget. If council wants a weekly report on where our budget are, we can automate that and send that out, all 70 pages that the report makes. But we think that there is a more fruitful endeavor to embark on, and that is adopting the Government Accounting Office's best practice. This is the GFOA award and standards. Matt has some experience in this. I have some experience in this from my time in DC. These are the standards of the GFOA are what big municipalities adopt. We want to start that process of adopting these financial accounting standards. We also have available Ohio Checkbook as a secondary option or as a backup option if council is interested in adopting some of these mature processes for budget management. Want to conduct a rate study. This is an assessment of all of our utilities, water, sewer, and electric. The plan from a year ago was to have an electric rate study in 2021. If you recall, we made changes to the residential solar program, and we said it then, we wanted to just make a minor change to allow for the net billing component for residential solar, because we wanted to see the impact of that over at least a 12-month period and do a rate study a year out. So the time has come, but we don't want to just stop with the electric. We want to look at the water and the sewer systems as well, make sure that we have the revenue that we need to support those entities and make the investments, but also be insensitive of the burden it puts on our residents and our customer base. This next one is on council's goals. It's explicitly written out there. That's the paved parking feasibility study. Let's put that on there. Let's tackle it, and let's work on it. I know there was enthusiasm to do that in 2020, and 2020 was just not the right year with so many businesses closing and not a lot of business activity, a high demand for parking, but we know there's a parking issue. We'll also look at Port Authority financing of infrastructure projects. This is something that's come up in the past. Is there a way to make improvements for us on our infrastructure without having to spend so much cash? Is there a way to spread out the cash obligations for some of these improvements? Those are things that we want to look at to see where does it make sense for us to look at Port Authority funding like we have done for other infrastructure projects. You know, we financed the water treatment facility and some distribution items. So we want to keep our eyes open and see what other opportunities we can find to make infrastructure improvements where it makes financial sense. Safe routes to school and the ATP projects are going to take up a lot of time over the next 2 years. We're in the full swing of things. We've submitted engineering plans to the schools on the Safe Routes to Schools project, and got word from Terry. She signed off on the preliminary engineering in the public right-of-way. So we're excited for that. Chief, we announced the bike officers program. We'll continue that in 2021. I hope you recognize the strides that we've made with our police department. We have a certification that meets the highest standard in the state for community policing. We have great officers on our team. We meet all those 8 can't wait policy recommendations. So we've done a lot of work with the police department. We'll continue. We look forward to improving our services. Climate action plan and explore additional solar. There's a subcommittee looking at the climate action plan. I'm excited to be part of this and bring the administration's work on energy, on water, and land managed expertise into this. Denise and Johnny's got a great project on alleys. Hope you've been able to enjoy the repavement of some of our alleys, and we've gotten really good feedback from residents. They're enjoying the alleys, using them as part of their active transportation needs. So we'll continue that work in 2021. All right, we've got some more work on PACE. One of the goals that council identifies is 1.5 marketing information on PACE, ECID, and other information. So we are planning to accomplish that in 2021. Overdevelopment, big project. That's still in the works. I know it's taken some while, but we'll continue at it. Farm property issue tax, we're looking to revisit that issue of losing our farm tax credit. We're continuing to do that work. The formalizing recognition of the community land trust model. A quick update on this. I know this was an issue 2019 and 2020 on how we would issue citations to community land trusts and how they're recognized within our general offenses and other zoning code. I know the subcommittee on the weeds has looked at this issue and made some modifications that resolve some of these issues. So that's already in the works. We'll be refining our utility improvement plan. This is our capital improvement plan. We're doing capital budgeting for 5 years, so we'll be looking at that 5-year plan this year. One note I would like to make about the 5-year capital plan. I had raised a question with Marianne. I said, Marianne, Ellis Pond gets a lot of money. We make so many improvements, and Betty Hughes is right here downtown, and I feel it's our most neglected park. And I didn't question it because the 5-year plan had a lot of these improvements in Ellis Pond. And so there were some assumptions there made in that 5-year capital budget by me that I thought that Ellis Pond, just as an example, I love Ellis Pond. I think it's a great park. I enjoyed it. I and my family enjoy it. But there are conversations that we should be having about capital improvements, particularly in the parks, looking at the big picture, and having a master plan will help resolve that from a capital budgeting perspective, just on the parks. But there are so many other things that we need to address. So we look to address those issues. Stormwater management fee, I presented on this issue in early 2020. I think it was in either January or February, and then COVID hit. So it was not the right time to consider a stormwater management fee or a fund or some form of being able to finance stormwater issues. But it's undeniable that Yellow Springs has a stormwater problem. We are getting a lot of water. Now it's evident in our infiltration and inflows. Our community produces 300,000 gallons per day on average in our sanitary system, but we were averaging over 600,000, twice as much water that our community is using. All that is clean water getting our system. That's storm water getting into our system. So we've got a problem there. It's costly. It creates backups in individuals' homes. It creates flooding. So there's something that we just need to address. And when our general fund is so stressed with other things, how do we support stormwater improvements? We need to create process. I'm happy to see what we've done with our subdivision regulations and incorporating stormwater management practices. I think it's great work. I'm concerned that that might not be enough, that may not be enough to deal with all of our stormwater issues. Finally, I got to close out this presentation with one great thing. We've got a dog park that we expect to begin construction this year. So there are our goals. And I would now take your questions.
Hey, Josue. Hi. Yeah. Thank you for that exhaustive list. So on some of the goals that were sort of up at the top, like, well, I think you had a goal about decrease water infiltration to 25%, but some of the other things like wastewater, working on the waste, it seems like it would be good to have some specific goals on that I think weren't included. Is that going to get more specificity for some of those things?
Yes, I'm hoping to. With the example you brought up, the sanitary sewer, the infiltration and inflow, we had an initial goal of reducing that by 10% back when we drafted that. Because we were right around 650,000. We had gotten notice from the state of Ohio, the Ohio EPA. We were on notice, and that's not a place we wanted to be. So we wanted to be at right below 600,000. That was a 10%. We did much better. We reduced our water flows over 40% because we got from over 600 down to 500,000. So for the sanitary sewer system, we're evaluating how much more impact we can have in the system. It was easy then to be able to pick a 10% water infiltration and inflow reduction because we knew that a lot of the work that needed to be done 5-7 years ago just didn't get done. So, we things as simple as replacing lids that had already been bought. So it was easy to get to that 10%. Now, how much more improvement and how much more work that we have to do? Can we expect the relining of sanitary sewers like we did in 2020? Would that have the same effect? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to precisely measure that. And so we're working on that. We know it's going to yield a savings in our sanitary sewer system. It's just a little more challenging to know how much efficiency we're going to gain. From the water perspective, the water loss, for me, I think that's a simple one, 25%. If we can reduce our water loss to 25% or lower, I think we got a big problem. We got both a management problem and we got an infrastructure problem. And for me, the management problem is it's going to be unacceptable. So we need to hit that target number. So there will be more development on a lot of these goals as we start putting together the work plans.
Well, I really appreciate all of the goals, all the work that you and the staff have done. And I think it's important that the community understands some of these things. I mean, that your list is too long to dive deeply into all of those things. But some of the critical things, what's the Wi-Fi, the water reductions, some of the things, I'm hopeful that as council members and as staff, we can pull these out and highlight them for the community so that people understand what's happening, because these are the fundamental things that we need to be doing. And at the same time, council has talked and staff has talked about being overwhelmed with workload. So it's also important to really decide what are the priority things and focus on them. Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree. And there's so many things that we are doing that are making this list. You've heard me talk about our goals of replacing 44 power poles. That's not on the list. That's just work that needs to get done. And there's so many other things like that, that it's just work that we need to do. And yeah, they're going to get done.
Josue, this is Laura. I know, again, there's so many things, but the Vernay cleanup is probably worth mentioning. And I know we're not totally in charge of that timeline, but what can you say about that for 2021?
For 2021, we look at what we wanted to accomplish in the remediation plan. We accomplished a lot of our goals then. An example, being able to verify the risk that the Vernay contamination posed for drinking water. We were able to rule that out. We've got this additional modeling work that the EPA, the US EPA had Vernay do. So that a lot of our goals were met in 2020. Now we need to carry the ball to the finish line. Where in that carrying the ball to the finish line is a lot of the things that we already been put in place. We need the final remediation plan. And the remediation plan is going to take another 20 years. This is not something that because the document comes together that the remediation is done. It's a 20-year remediation plan, and it composes of 3 main items. Removing the soil, the contaminated soil. I don't know why it wasn't done 20 years ago, but we've got soil that's leaching contaminants into the groundwater, and that's continuing to contribute contaminants to the bloom. So through our work, Mary Ann's been part of this, Tom Dietrich, Nadia Malarkey, Mark, Johnny, so many of us have been working with the US EPA on this. Through our work, we've been able to expand the soil excavation and removal areas. So we've got that concession from Vernay and the US EPA. 2, the lining of whatever gets removed to create an impermeable area and rerouting of the storm system that's in that area. The third piece is this continuation of the pump and treat system. The pump and treat system, there are pumps within the groundwater system that are pumping water through a cartridge to filter out the contaminants, and then it's sending the water to our sanitary system. So it's filtering out the contaminants. And I point that out. That's not something new in the system. That's been in place, but it hasn't worked as efficiently as the team originally thought. But I bring that up because we've explored all the other options that we thought that could work, such as the infusion of fungi or other chemicals to neutralize the contaminants. And there just seem to be an effective solution, more effective than the pump and treat system that we have in place. It's going to take 20 years, but it should resolve in the next 20 years. I'm sure that's what the folks said 20 years ago, that we wouldn't have this problem, but I think we've got a better team here looking at it, and we've got the support of a citizens group that I give them full credit for holding the firm accountable and getting us concessions. But I think that we've got a lot of engagement from our team, and we have been able to get the concession. So what's happening with Vernay for 2021? The final remediation plan needs to be finalized, which all the pieces are already in place. 2, we need to have public meetings on it and get the final public input on this, and take it back to the community and listen. And we will share all the work that we've done on this matter. And then have that work begin. There are a lot of things that have happened over the last 12 months that have helped improve the site. A good example is we have contingency plans. What happens if a water main breaks in that area? Well, Johnny's got his pulse on where the valves are, and if something breaks, we can shut things off to prevent backflow issues and having contaminants enter our drinking water system. So we've got that resolved. So that's safety measures in place. We've recently replaced a power pole that we own there, and we were able to test some of our contingency plan. And that part of the contingency plan, what if something happens on the site? Do we have the support of Vernay to change it? Well, we were able to test that because we had a bad power pole there that needed to be replaced. And Vernay and their contractors were outstanding. They came in, removed the soil, they took the soil to get special treatment, and at their cost. They footed the bill to do that. We've had a studies analysis done on the exposure, potential exposure to employees should they have to work in the ground on that system. We've got several teams in the US EPA has signed off on memos outlining the potential risk, and there isn't a significant adverse risk to our employees if they were to work in the ground to fix utilities. So we've done a lot of that work. So to answer your question, Laura, we'll continue at it. Actually, we were scheduled to have a meeting with Renee on the 4th, just with 3 days from now, 3 days. But we rescheduled that because we don't have the updates, all the updates that we need. So Renee and I went back, and Renee is our project coordinator with the US EPA. Went back and forth today to reschedule that. So we'll continue that work. We didn't see it there, but I'm sorry it's not in there, but we'll continue that work. There are other projects that we have considered, and it's too premature to start talking about some of those projects. I have met with Ed, who is the president of Renee, so did Marianne and others. And we said, how can we're entertaining questions. How can we turn a brownfield to a greenfield? Can we look at parks? Can we look at solar and things like that? We explore that, but it's just too early to continue those conversations. But Ed is open, Renee is open, and they are interested in exploring collaboration with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Josue? Josue, I just wanted to highlight two things, the very last two items. I really liked seeing with the stormwater management, the emphasis on incentivizing with, credits or waivers. And the other thing is, I'm just curious. So once we start constructing a dog park, how long does it take? Approximately, is it?
Johnny could jump in on this. We actually were talking about just parking for the park last week. Johnny?
The parking lot will be the first, but it's probably going to be at least a 3-month process from start to finish. Once the funding's in place, once the money is there to make it an ongoing dog park, we're still finalizing some things, but it's about a 3 or 4 month schedule for actually when ground's broke back in the dog park.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. By the way, Johnny, I forgot to say happy birthday to my birthday buddy. So hope you get to take off Friday.
I am.
Nice. All right, so that's what I had. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, Josue, this looks great. As I promised, I'm gonna try to merge some of these ideas with the other document. And I know that we're gonna try to schedule our council retreat that was postponed so that we can do a deeper dive and talk about things like Mary Ann mentioned, prioritizing. And I know actually all council members have highlighted, Laura's highlighted that our number one thing is we got to keep dealing with the pandemic, right? And then hopefully we get to do a lot of other things as well. And I know Lisa and Kevin have also contributed. So great work. So I think that moves us into new business. And we have one item, which is the request to support the cost of living study that the James A. McKee Association does, I believe, every 4 years. So, Mary Ann, did you want to say anything in particular since you put it on the agenda?
Yes, I think it's every 10 years, every decade. And we were asked, one, whether we wanted to be involved, and if so, to have a point person, and whether the village would contribute financially. And the cost of probably about $10,000, I guess, was what Jerry felt the total cost would be. So I recommend that the village does participate in this. I think it's helpful for village government to be a partner in this. And I would suppose that it would make sense for Josue to be the point person. And I suggest that council agree to, I don't know, pay $5,000, $10,000. I don't know, but that we contribute some funds.
So I reached out to Jerry before the meeting. And one question I had was whether there was a precedent for the village supporting in the past. He thought there was, and he doesn't know how much, but he mentioned 2,500 as would be very helpful from the village. And, I also want to reiterate or emphasize as well that I think this is really important. It ties to a lot of different aspects of what we're looking at with affordability, of course, but it also is very much central to some of the work that we want to do with systemic racism. So there are a lot of implications as we start to look at beyond the justice system, how we fight racism. I think as a side note, this to me seems to be important related to the conversation of affordability and the flip side, the rapid gentrification of the village and what kinds of things can we identify policy-wise that would be helpful. And I think it's really important that we continue to talk about affordability. We recognize gentrification, and we don't not talk about it because of who's involved or what issues are involved, because it is right at the heart of a lot of the things that we're trying to address. So, other questions or comments?
Brian, this is Brian. Obviously, I wasn't here 10 years ago, but since this is something that only comes around every on a periodic basis, I would suggest that it be brought back to council as a resolution, since it's of a temporary, periodic nature that isn't a regular yearly thing. And I don't want to step on Matt's toes, but because it's not necessarily an expense that was budgeted, he's going to have to figure out where those funds would come from for the 2,500, or to do a supplemental appropriation when we have our first round of that. So I'd be happy to draft a resolution for council's approval at the next meeting to that effect.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so let's go ahead and just, Judy, let's do a roll call to make sure that there's support to bring a resolution to the next meeting.
Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
I think we could do this tonight, but I'm going to vote yes that we address it next time.
Okay. McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I believe then we are in the manager's report section of the agenda.
All right, I don't have a PowerPoint for this one, so I'll go by quickly. We've continued doing that fiber build out. The underground is in place. We're configuring the equipment and Wi-Fi, so that's going well. We're able to get the community foundation connected on the broadband network, so that gives us ability to test a product and test our system that it's working. Learning Center has reopened. It was closed briefly for the holiday school break. I was worried that we may have to close it with the significant number of COVID exposures that we had among employees, but we're able to carry on. Samantha and Florence have done a wonderful job at keeping that operation going. So it's a great service that we provide in that area. I've got a lot of information in this manager's report. It includes the lodging tax report. We reported that out. Matt has made the extension, the decision to extend the filings by 30 days. One thing that I will mention on that is that we are working with the Airbnb and other similar platforms to do an audit function to get sales report, and we will be able to validate and cross-reference the tax filings that we're getting and the data that Airbnb would provide. We're also exploring, and this particular item is not on here, but we're exploring the possibility of having those platforms collect a tax on our behalf and remit the tax to us. So this will be an ongoing conversation. Just today, we went back and forth about the deadlines and how to manage that. I see the lodging tax as being business tax, and those typically business taxes are like sales tax and lodging tax. They're done monthly or on a quarterly basis. So we want to look at that, exploring that opportunity, but also make it easier for the Airbnb and other transient guest lodging units and owners, make it an easy process for them as well. So we'll continue to explore that. The police department, a lot of great work in the police department. I'm happy for what they've been able to accomplish, the certification, the train the trainer certification, and we've got the Officer of the Year award. So they've done a great job. We continue our training model. I've listed the trainings that have been conducted, and I've put a schedule of what trainings are being planned in 2021. So, please take a look at that. If you have any questions, let me know. Public Works did a lot of great work. The snowstorm issues that they had to deal with weren't on this report, as we had to submit it before the storm came through, but I'm impressed with the team coming out at 3 a.m., clearing the road. So anyone was out there at 4:30, those roads were clear and ready for use. So good work with that team. We replaced 2 poles. We installed a new pole, fiber pole, to support the work of the public Wi-Fi in the Hawthorne apartments. We had 2 water main breaks, so we had a busy reporting period. We had hydrant repairs to make. And then we got some standard maintenance work that we did in the other utilities. And there's a report about activities in the youth center. Samantha put together a nice report about all the things that they're doing and how they structure their day. And I thought that council and the public would appreciate learning what's happening at the Learning Center. So that report is in there. The active transportation projects, the site survey crew will be out this week. We've sent letters to all the property owners near the area where we'll be working. So don't be surprised if you see site survey crews taking measurements and analyzing the future shared path along Main Street. And that is my report.
All right, thanks, Josue. So I have a quick question for Matt. Is Matt still? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so Matt, so when I'm looking at the report, so it sounds like we've got 44 transient guest lodging establishments that are supposed to file. Is that right?
That's right. That's what we have right now.
Okay, and then do we have, is the total amount now up to 46 because of the 2 that were approved at the last PC meeting, or?
I'll have to confirm with Raven about the permits right now, but that's what we have. We're going off of with the database about.
Okay. So one thing I guess I want to mention is just, I hope that, and this was brought up, I think, by Kevin Stokes way back when we did this, is that we're regularly tracking like the growth of our transient guest lodging, because we know that a downside is that takes properties off the market that could potentially be more affordable. But I understand that it also supports people, and makes them able to stay in the village. So I feel that if it's not being done, that every time a new application comes to Planning Commission, there should be some reminder of how many we currently have and where they are, and that be part of the process. It's not exploded out of control. We don't have the fat cat rolling through town, buying up all the properties, that are residential, but we've wanted to watch out for that.
Brian, that's a good point, and I think this is where it was good, a wise decision to make the Airbnb and transient guest lodging a conditional use application because it requires a hearing. Denise is on the line and she can go in greater detail.
There's Denise. Hey.
And part of the application for conditional use, Denise mapped out what Airbnbs are in the area or other transient guest lodging. Denise, you want to add anything to that?
We've seen a significant slowing down of the number of transient guest lodging permits since they became a conditional use. There were only 2 in 2020. We did have 1 in January, and we are having 1 in February. But that helped a lot. We do keep track of them. We actually have them GIS'd on a map, so we know where they are. And partly we did that because we wanted to make sure that if there aren't too many within a neighborhood or within a block, because we don't want a certain area of town to just become all Airbnb. And so far, most of the property owners are people that either live in the house or next door or live somewhere else in town. We're not seeing people that are buying these as investments, but we are keeping an eye on them, and we do periodically go to the sites, Airbnb and VRBO, and check to see if any new listings pop up.
Great. Thanks for that, Denise.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess this just ties to, I'm worried a lot about gentrification and, about the only entity that can really do anything is government. And so I think we need to keep on thinking about our commitments to affordability and diversity and equity in the village. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Josue?
Just real quickly, and I want to thank you, Brian, for catching that point about the growth of the transient guest lodgings. The Josue, you mentioned, and we always say Airbnb. I chuckle like they're the only game in town. But you talked about the other platforms, and when that conversation began, if memory serves, Airbnb was the only one that was willing to collect the taxes themselves. Are the other competing platforms starting to do that now?
I don't know, Kevin, and to what extent they are doing it. We know that the Airbnb is doing it, and if we have multiple ways of doing the collections, then we'll explore that. But yes, there are collection challenges, and I'm sure that you guys, as when you were discussing transient guest lodging and the tax itself, many of those challenges exist now. But what I can say is that the honor system only works when everyone's being honorable.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, an interesting note, Josue, and it may be worth looking back. When we first started the lodging tax, I remember bringing up that we should, avail ourselves of, the Airbnb tool to just do it for us. And there was some pushback from our prior finance director. It might be worth just looking back at what the concerns were. I think part of it was just that it was early in this happening. So maybe the system wasn't that great, but I can't remember what the concerns were.
Mm-hmm. I'm aware of some of it. One of it was the cost. And so we're looking into that. It's, Airbnb is happy to collect a fee and remit it to us at a cost. So there's some of those challenges, but we'll explore it and have the conversation. I think, Raven, did I see your hand up?
I just wanted to offer up that I have gone back a couple of times and looked at the minutes, the council meeting minutes, when that was discussed. Unfortunately, the minutes didn't provide any real insight into the reasoning that Melissa Dodd had for not going for it at the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I could elucidate you as to that issue, and it had to do with transparency. They are not held to the same accountability as a government agency with regard to transparency. So that was her primary concern.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one request, Josue. Next time you give your report, we had a citizen ask a question about income tax. Henry Myers sent in a letter, and I think I understand his point, but not to take up time right now. But if you could address that next time.
What particular item would you like me to address? Because Harry Myers is, there's a bit of a complicated situation there. One, he's talking about who bears the burden of services. And his point is someone who is the folks that pay property tax versus those that pay income tax, and there's a different burden that's shared there. One thing that was not as explicit in this letter that in a previous letter he was more explicit about was income tax and the reciprocal tax structure.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy answer to get at those issues because who bears the burden of the cost? That changes. Well, what is the service that we're talking about and how those services are covered?
Yeah, this is Lisa. I've worked with and spoken to Henry extensively on this topic, and I do believe that at the heart of his ask is that we move to a reciprocal model. That's my understanding.
Yeah,
and Brian has weighed on this reciprocal tax issue in the past. And I don't know, Brian, it doesn't merit having a specific council discussion about this. I don't know
Yeah, actually, Laura and I why don't you and I talk offline about it, because I've been interested in this issue, but I agree that we should probably narrow the scope or at least focus on what the different issues are. So let's come back to that. But it has been something that I know has been raised on a lot of different levels. And I think the other nuance now that Henry's highlighting is that, a lot of people for various reasons don't contribute to income tax at all. Mm-hmm. There's even been talk in the past of people saying that they would be willing to, but anyway, but I think that it is complicated. So
well, can I ask a specific question? Do we now do the practice of, let's say, another jurisdiction where somebody works taxes income at 2% and we tax it at 1%? Do we share the income where we get the 1% and the other jurisdiction gets that additional 1% rather than 2%?
No.
Okay, well, that's a pretty common practice.
And the landscape is changing as we speak with COVID and a lot of working from home. The Ohio state law says you pay taxes where you work. And now with so many employees working from home, corporations were given the options to pay taxes where that employee was working, whether that was home or in the company base. And RETA issued a memo on this, and I'm happy to share the memo with council on this topic. And the landscape is changing, and it's going to be in transition for years to come. I was reading a note that there's some companies that are not asking their employees to come back to the office. They're going to be remote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we need to look at it. And to be clear, I'm not interested in raising anybody's taxes, but I think we need to make sure that it's being dispersed appropriately to the jurisdictions that should get it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for clarifying, Laura. I wasn't sure if you wanted to go in that direction.
No, I don't. But I mean, I'm aware of, pilots and baseball players. They end up paying tax in multiple jurisdictions. And and it is a pain. I understand that. But for most people, it means maybe filing a return in one or two jurisdictions.
Right. And there's also several time tests that the pilots and others have to meet.
I think it's worth having an update, having the issues presented, and having a discussion about it.
I agree.
Okay.
All right. So do we have any other future agenda items?
Art and Culture Commission will have a 2020 year in review.
Yeah, and you mentioned that at the last meeting, so it should be on our future agenda items, but if it's not, we need to put it there,
I
Council
didn't-
retreat. I'd like to get the council retreat, and not necessarily at this meeting, but I'd like to get that date set for this month.
Yeah, I think the date can be set offline,
Yeah.
but we can talk about it at our next meeting to make sure we've
Okay.
got the agenda we want. Council retreat agenda. Anything else?
You've got the resolution to approve the $2,500 to the McKee Group. We'll get on there.
Brian, in a previous meeting, Kevin had wanted an update on energy consumption, power consumption. We've got the data for the 2020 usage, so I'm ready to come back to council and present 2020 power consumption.
Okay. Any other items?
What about that second reading for ordinance 2021-03? Did I sort of miss that, or what happened about that?
It was read in as an emergency, so there was no.
Okay.
It was just a mistake on the agenda.
Oh, got it.
All right, so I have two items. One is, and at some point, I want to bring back the Juneteenth paid holiday, which there was an indication that some council members wanted to consider that. I don't know that that'll happen at the next meeting though. And the second thing is I want to have, and I don't know if it's in boards and commissions or a separate item, but I'd like to have a report about the first year with the Yellow Springs Development Corporation. And I want to discuss a little bit about, especially since I saw it in the village team's goals, and it's referenced in some of our goals. I want to just kind of understand, first, how things are going, how we are going to work together. An interesting thing came up in the newspaper about the discussion around the criteria that was established for the sale of the firehouse and whether things like that should be revisited. And I guess I also want to understand how village values and YS schools values and township values and all that is playing into the process. So that is something I'd like to have happen in one of the next couple meetings.
Lisa and I could do that, I think.
Okay. All right, and if that's anything else before we adjourn? All right. Well, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, and we are done a few minutes ahead of time. Thanks, everyone. Great discussion. Stay warm. Be careful. It's slick out there. And
Happy birthday.
happy birthday, everyone. You too, Marianne.
Happy birthday, everyone.
Birthday.
Judy.
Glad you're all here.
Yes. See ya.
Glad we were all born.